morning, I'm Councillor Vikki Slade. I'm Leader of BCP Council. It's lovely to see so many people saying hi to us already this morning. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can today. We've had quite a few submitted already, but we do only have half an hour. I have to go on to do a media interview in a little while, so I have to cut it tight. I'm also going to try and answer some questions that are coming in as we go, so I will do best I can. Anything we can't cover, the comms team will do their best to come back and cover them for you in later on today. So if we go on to my first question, which was about last weekend, from Simon. Should Saturday have been treated like an August bank holiday as it was the busiest day of the year? It was actually the busiest day that we've seen this year across our beaches. Of course, we know when bank holidays are coming, we can plan for them, we can create the staff for them. The reality is that we just had the Air Festival. Previous to that, we just had the bank holiday. Rubbish weather, but obviously people's staffing commitments are already in place. And September is not high season. So the team worked really hard with about 4 days notice to increase the staffing levels. RNLI were fantastic, managed to stand back up 8 of their towers. The local life surfing clubs were brilliant as well. We got extra staff in place for parking management. Over 750 parking fines given, so awful parking. I got calls from patrolmen, I got calls from MPs, I got calls from residents, really angry at the disgusting way that some people were parking in their streets. And it is a nightmare. Just to let you know, I did have a meeting alongside Cllr Burns with a minister on Tuesday to try and get some movement on letting us have higher parking fines, because fundamentally there are people who are now not even bothering to go in a car park. They're just leaving their car and taking a risk, and that's disgusting. The cost to the council of towing someone's car is about 10 times the amount that we recover. So, that's not a practical solution for us. We need to be able to increase the fines, and we're working really hard to do that. And I also just want to pay tribute to the cleansing staff. The amount of litter that people were leaving on the beach, not okay. And they were out there 5 o'clock Sunday morning trying to make it lovely again. So, huge respect to the staff. We can't predict great weather. We just had a few days' notice, so the team did the best that they absolutely could. So moving on to a question about the air show. So interesting question from Michael. And apologies, my dog has just come back from his walk. So if you see somebody jumping up, it's my dog. So why have I always been against the air show? I haven't been against the air show. I'm not against the air show. What I'm against is the council taxpayers, particularly those people who are struggling to make ends meet, paying for the air show. As we confirmed last night, the estimated net cost for the Air Festival to the council taxpayer is £479,000. Now, there is a draft figure. We're waiting for all the last bills to come in, but the council spends £900,000 on putting the Air Festival on. It receives so much more, so around about £500,000 in income. All of those figures are going into the public domain in a cabinet report next month, which means that the net cost is somewhere between £400,000 and £500,000. I personally believe that those people who make the most money from it should be making a contribution to it. We've been really clear about that. That's why we started a working group. We're asking people from the hospitality industry, the events industry, the council teams, the Red Arrows Association of Bournemouth, all of those people to work with us, find a way to make it viable. Ultimately, if it's not financially viable, we can't run it. So I have no problem with the Air Festival. I've taken my children there since they were tiny, so that is simply not true. We have a £44 million shortfall in the finances next year. The sort of decisions we're going to have to make in terms of cutting services are horrible. I don't want to be making any of them, and it's difficult for me to justify spending money on that. As popular as it might be, if we're unable to do services for really vulnerable people. The carbon footprint of the air show, just a comment there from Tops Data. So the carbon footprint, actually, the vast majority of that is people travelling to the air festival, mainly in their cars. The cost of the actual flying itself in terms of carbon is actually very, very small. And talking to the Red Arrows pilots, many of those are now going to sustainable fuels. So, you know, those things are less of an issue than the carbon footprint, for example, of last weekend when people were all arriving in their cars. So we need to move people away from travelling that way. And over time, you know, aircraft will become either more efficient or they will become less popular, and we need to see how that goes. So moving on to the next question is about the crematorium. So William has asked, and there was a bit of background around this, around people who have had their ashes scattered at Gravel Hill site and worried about a phrase that I was a bit shocked by: the site could be given over to other purposes. Just to want to reassure anybody that has their loved one's ashes interred or scattered at Gravel Hill site, the rules that we have to follow is that anywhere where we have ashes or remains interred has to remain protected and maintained for about 70 years after the last interment. That means that site isn't going to be used for anything else. The current situation is that when the centre was closed down, it hadn't been maintained for many, many years under previous councils, and that's a failure of previous councils, and we can't change that. But the reality is that it was going to cost £2 million to put new cremators into that crematorium, to go for electric cremators, so they're better for the environment. But the size of electric cremators at the moment are so large that there'll be major works needed to the building, BAP surveys, environmental issues. So £2 million cost and around about 18 months to 2 years to actually do it. We don't have £2 million. You know, we've just talked about 44 million shortfall. If we use £2 million of our community infrastructure levy, that would mean no money for things like parks, playgrounds, other infrastructure that we want to do in our communities, when actually the capacity of the Bournemouth crematorium is currently about 50%. And that's because we've got the crematorium in Litchett and another one in New Milton. So right now, we would have to borrow. The cost of borrowing would mean that we'd lose £300,000 a year. So go back to where we started. Can we justify putting a new crematorium in right now at a cost of either £300,000 a year or a fairly low annual cost, but lose all of the capital that we want to spend on other things for people who live here? And right now, the decision is that there isn't a justification of it. What we want to do is we want to work with the funeral industry. We're talking to the faith groups and we're talking to the local funeral companies to see whether they want to partner with us, whether there's a third sector solution, whether we might even say, you know what, we want a crematorium there, but it's not publicly funded. So we're looking at all of those options. Adam's asked if I've got any positive news. Oh, Adam, I'm so sorry. The world is a bit miserable, isn't it? The weather is sunny-ish. You know, we've got the announcement of the Coast with the Most finalists tonight. So there'll be some businesses getting some great news. Two Rivers Meet won the best community provider of leisure services, I think, this week. So good news for them. They've won an award. We've been shortlisted for some awards up in London on the barrel bike scheme. So yeah, there are lots of really good bits of news, but unfortunately people are wanting to know what's happening about some of the negative stuff. A couple of people have commented about ridiculous parking charges. You know what? Parking charges in Bournemouth are not dissimilar to Winchester, Brighton, Bath. Other places are charging that. That is the going rate for parking. I'm sorry, that's what it is. They're not going to go down. But you're right, parking fines need to be higher. That's where we're going. Paul Andrews has asked about the £2 bus scheme coming to the end. It has been the best thing Totally agree with you. What I would say is that coming to an end in October is going to £2.50, which is still a pretty good deal for some of the very long bus rides. You can go all the way to Salisbury for £2, all the way to Swanage. Fantastic. If the bus price is less than £2.50, then it's capped at £2.50. Is there a chance the council could collaborate? £44 million, Paul. If we didn't have a £44 million shortfall, I would be saying, yes, I love bus travel, but it's just right now not feasible. I want to see the government take this on longer, and they have committed to £2.50, which is a start. Moving on to the next question I've got here about planning. So Mick has asked, all right, I'll answer that question about the Twin Sails Bridge from Mick. When will development for the land west of Twin Sails Bridge continue? It's been stalled for years. It has been stalled for years. What you might have seen last night is we've now published our proposals to close Future Places. Future Places has had the site for the last couple of years since we made the decision in 2020 to buy the site back. I've been hugely disappointed about why it's taken 3 years with no movement. I am aware lots of stuff's been going on in terms of the remediation of the site. Obviously, it was a power station, so there's lots of work that has to go on underground, etc. But the good news is we are moving ahead with Regeneration. Hulls Bay is our number one site to move on. There are some proposals to start developing the early parts of the site that don't have any contamination. And so hopefully that will make some very quick progress. Poole is really a positive news story right now. You want some more positive news, Adam? The Dolphin Centre is doing so well with all its new uses. But we know that there's a lot more money that we can put into Poole in terms of getting more housing in the middle of Poole so that it can drive the businesses there. So, hold fire with the worries about Hulls Bay. I'm hoping that in the next few months, we'll have some really positive news there. So on to the next question, I think, which is finances. I don't know the name of the person that's asked the next question. Thank you, Scotty Dog. That's why I don't have a name. Scotty Dog 137. How close is BCP to declaring Section 114? So, Section 114 notice is effectively a bankruptcy notice for councils. The reality is that over the last 3 years, our reserves have been drawn right the way down. The last 3 years, over £30 million was overspent each year. So Southampton made a statement yesterday. They're spending £2 million a month more than they've got coming in. We're probably at £3 million a month. And instead of actually dealing with that overspend, the last 3 years, the previous administration took out of the reserves about £30 million a year, plugged the gap. You plug the gap, deferring the problem. There is no money left. There's £27 million left in the reserves, most of which is earmarked for things that it has to be spent on. So there isn't enough money to keep doing that. We will have to deal with the cuts. We will have to shrink some services. We'll have to shrink the council. If we don't, and we are unable to pay our bills, that's when we'd have to declare a Section 114. And if that were to happen, the council would lose all its own decision making, and the government would effectively say the only thing you can spend money on is what you statutorily, legally have to do. So anything that's a non-statutory spend would have to stop. We don't want to do that. We don't want to be told what to spend our money on. We want to have that choice. So we will do what we can to stop that from happening. But there is a massive problem in our special needs funding. A lot of councils are in the same situation. Lots more children needing EHCPs, which are education, health and care plans. And when children have an EHCP, they often need to go to a special school, or their parents will ask them to go to a special school because they don't feel that they're getting what they need from mainstream school. Those schools cost sometimes 10 or 20 times the cost of a regular mainstream school. And if the if the family win their battle to get their child to those schools, which I totally get why you would do that, the council picks up the tab, not the government. And we have something like £67 million overspend in that budget. Unless the government lets us write that debt off, we'll be bankrupt. So yes, there are huge issues in SEND. Somebody's just put that SEND, special educational needs and disabilities. There are huge issues, but the reality is they're not of our making, and we're having to fix the problem. The government needs to pick up this problem, and that's why somebody's asked a question about something called safety valve. Are we looking to go down the safety valve route? Safety valve is one of the schemes the government allows those councils in the most difficult financial situation with their special educational needs, allows them to work with the government to come up with a solution. Problem is, there is an expectation that we find a chunk of money to go towards that. It's like a lot of things. It sounds great, but we need to check out whether it's actually going to work for us, because we don't have any money left to put in. We're currently in a different program called the Delivering Better Value program, which is the one below safety valve. And we've been able to bid for £1 million to help with that. But 67 deficit, we've got £1 million. So it is a real problem. And the team are working night and day to try and improve the performance of special educational needs team. The time it takes to get your EHCP is way too long. One of the problems is, for an EHCP to be processed, it needs an educational psychologist. Educational psychologists are like unicorns. They are wonderful, beautiful, fabulous people who do incredible work, but they're incredibly expensive, and there are very few of them. And if you've got hundreds of children waiting for an EHCP, there's only so many that can actually get through the system. So it's a real problem. So moving on to something else. Do I have anything else on the... No, why are residents, Amanda, why are residents no longer contacted by letter about neighbours' developments? This is something most councils have stopped. Dorset Council stopped doing it in 2020. We stopped doing it this year. Basically, it costs us £20,000 to send letters to neighbours, and those letters are not a requirement of the council. So again, not statutory. We've got to consider everything. We are required to put up, or there are requirements to put up site notices or letters. So we've gone with site notices. They are erected for at least 21 days to allow the neighbours to actually see them. Now, we recognise some people don't see those notices, but unfortunately, it's a cost we can no longer afford to do. Anybody can go onto the council website and they can get a list from their own ward or Poole or Bournemouth or Christchurch of planning applications. In my ward in Broadstone, I do a weekly newsletter, and it includes myself and my colleague Peter. Every week we do all of the planning applications for Broadstone. So if you're not getting that from your councillor, I suggest you talk to them, ask if they'd be willing to actually send you out a copy of the weekly list. That allows people to get that. Our aim is that the website will allow you to apply for alerts, but the website is probably another year away from getting that in. So just to say that there is a neighbour period in every planning application. There is a period of time, a statutory consultation period, whereby anybody can make a comment, an objection, a letter of support via either letter or email. That is something anybody can do. You can all look up where you live. You can put your road in and it will tell you all the planning applications that have ever been done there, and you can check that out and actually put in comments, and we would never make any decision on an application until that statutory period has expired. The other thing just to say on planning is that if you are worried about a planning application, that's what your ward councillors are for. They are there to help you to navigate that system, to help you with objections. And if there's a lot of objections or it's a particularly contentious site, they can call it into planning committee where they can speak, you can speak, and actually have your say in front of a committee of 15 people who will make that decision in front of you. So Let's have a look at some questions that have come in here. Julie has asked about scooters and e-bikes on the prom. So we have a ban between July and August, between 10 and 6 of not having bikes of any sort. The team do a great job in trying to actually intervene and stop those bikes. There are much fewer bikes. It's obviously a lot busier, so people can't get along there. E-bikes are exactly the same as bikes in terms of those rules. The e-scooters that are Beryl e-scooters, they're geo-fenced during that time, so they can't use it. They're also geo-fenced in terms of their speed. It's the private ones that are the real issue, and the private ones, unfortunately, are illegal anyway. So it's a police matter if somebody is using an e-scooter that is not a Beryl hire e-scooter anywhere on the roads, on the pavements, on the cycle lanes, in any public land. That is a police matter. You can call the police. Clearly the police act upon risk and harm, but it is illegal to use an e-scooter that is not a hire one. So that's sort of out of our domain. We are expecting a change in legislation, and hopefully if they do get made legal, have speed limiters and things like that. But for Beryl, you do actually have to be a driving license holder and register your driving license every time when you use the Beryl system. So that's allows you to complain to Beryl if you're worried, because they know exactly who is using those e-scooters. So somebody's just said that they cycled down the prom yesterday and there weren't any other e-bikes being used on the prom. So I don't think it's a major problem. There are a lot of people, myself included, who think, do you know what, it's the perfect route for cycling, but the problem is the width and how we manage the two together, and that comes up an awful lot. Let's have a look at some other questions. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, and I'm going to where are we? E-scooters, glitter, thanks to your efforts, no problem. Carbon footprint. Someone said it feels like a foregone conclusion about the air festival being binned. We're not going through the motions, Aaron. I promise you that. I am working as hard as I can to make sure we can do this. What we've said in our budget is we cannot afford 400,000. Fact. We cannot deliver a £400,000 air festival. What we've worked out is how much we think we can afford next year. And if we can get some decent sponsors, did you know, for example, that the pilots who come to the air festival, their accommodation is funded by your council tax? I was horrified when I heard that. Utterly horrified. I assumed, like most people, that the hotels would love to have the pilots in there and that would be their contribution, as they are obviously very, very busy during that time. I've made it really clear that needs to be funded by businesses. The car hire for the pilots, of course, they've got to get around. Is there not a local company that would be willing to pay for that? We need to think more creatively. So it's not a foregone conclusion, but it is a foregone conclusion we're not spending £400,000. Jason Miles has asked, any chance of chilling out with speed cameras and vans? Jason, quick one. That's the police. You need to take that to them. I'd encourage the Police and Crime Commissioner to do something like this. The only camera vans we have are the ones that are able to patrol things like the school entrances, which is obviously about the zigzags. But we don't do speed cameras, speed camera vans. The fixed cameras are positioned by us, but obviously the money goes to the police. And you know what? Don't speed is not a problem. I'd really love to see less people speeding, and then it wouldn't matter if there were speed cameras on every road, because it wouldn't be affecting you. So why can't the government give more realistic budgets for the very real and obvious needs? LinkedIn user, spot on. Just so you know, if you go back 15 years or so, we actually had £105 million a year more from government than we have now. The costs of the council are funded by council tax, business rates, fees and charges, and some grants. Grants typically can only be spent on capital projects. So we can't get a grant for let's say cycle lanes, because everyone wants to talk about it. If we get a grant for cycle lanes, that's what we have to spend it for. We can't spend it on special educational needs. We can't even spend it on subsidising bus fares, because that's a revenue thing, not a capital thing. The business rates, people talk a lot about, why don't we charge people less business rates to help businesses? Business rates are set by the valuation agency and the government. We collect it through somebody's business rate gets paid to us. We only get to keep about 40% of it. The majority of that goes straight back to government and handed to areas that are deemed in greater need. So if we were to subsidise somebody's business rate, that wouldn't be coming from the business rate pot. It would be coming from the other services, whether that be disabled people, elderly people, children in care, emptying your bins, doing your potholes, all of those things. Julie is clearly having a horrible time. Julie says you've got no heating, hot water, no washing facilities, and walls full of mould. Do you know what? I don't know, Julie, your circumstances. I think you need to send something in to us to look into. But there are some really bad housing conditions out there right now, and the council's got some less than fabulous facilities. There's nothing else out there. Prices are so high. The council are working really, really hard to build as many properties as they can. Building property takes 2 years minimum when you go from right the way through planning to build. So we're working hard to deliver more social homes, more affordable homes. Unfortunately, there are over 8,000 planning permissions that the council has given, 8,000 properties where the builders haven't built them. Not us, developers. Either because they're storing the land until it becomes more profitable, or because it's not profitable for them to do it because of the inflationary costs. Really high interest rates means that even property developers, and I'm not asking you to feel sorry for them, but property developers have got to borrow money. And if they're borrowing money at 3 times or 4 times the interest rates they were a year ago, then the numbers don't add up. And so those houses don't get built. And that is a real problem for us. So, we really need the government to get a grip of the finances, so that the Bank of England can bring the interest rates down, and that will actually help to kickstart everything. And that will allow us to borrow money at a lower rate, because we are borrowing money at very high rates as well. So the town is going to rot, Paul says. What will happen? I'm sorry that you feel that way, Paul. I hope you contributed to the Bournemouth Town Centre survey that we did earlier in the summer. We had over 2,500 people that did. They came up with some great ideas. We're currently analysing those ideas. We are planning a town centre summit to take all the public ideas to all of the organisations that can help us. The MP will be coming. We're hoping people from government will be coming. Historic England, property developers, landlords, retailers, business organisations, universities, language schools, you name it, the police, the health service, they're all invited. They will be coming to work collectively to say, he owns the building over there. They've got some money. They've got an idea. How can we make that all happen together? So the output of that town centre summit will come probably tail end of the year. There'll be some clear, measurable things that we want to do. But again, remember, the council doesn't own most of those buildings. So we need to be the enabler and the facilitator for other people. Okay, we are almost up to the end. The public won't be coming to those. That is a town centre summit. The public have had their opportunity to put their ideas in. We now need to talk to the people who have the ability to make those things happen, to see how we make them happen. Clearly, if there are any projects that come through at the other end, then, if they involve a planning application, then everybody will have their say on a planning application. And if that involves a significant spend of public money, then there's likely to be a process through that as well. And remember, any time the council makes a decision, it goes through a democratic process. So any major decision will have the cabinet or full council to make a decision, and it will have scrutiny as well. So the public are always welcome to attend a meeting, to ask questions to anything on the agenda, to raise a petition, make a statement, just watch and engage for it. So that's where I would go with that. So Julie, you need to actually engage. Going back to Julie's no help on her case, I can't talk about your specific case. What I need you to do is I need you to engage with the housing team and engage with your local councillors. The team have just put the conditions website on there. So Anne-Marie Clark has said, finally, good news. Thank you for the beautiful flower baskets that have been stunning all summer. The cheerful chaps that pick up the litter in Poole Old Town. Two things. I want to say thank you to the cheerful chaps that pick up the litter. I also want to say thank you to the BIDs, the business improvement districts, who do so much to try and help our town centres. They are funded by the businesses. They all pay a levy and the businesses decide what they want to spend their money on. And sometimes it's hanging baskets, sometimes it's events, sometimes it's marketing. So it isn't just the council that's trying to do their bit, it's the business community as well. So support your local businesses. They'll make more money. They make more money. They can give us more money and make the place look lovely. But brilliant to the chaps that pick up the litter. Really grateful to them and the hard work that they do. I will be back hopefully next month. I'm just about to go and do a big interview about future places. So I would watch out in the media about what we're saying about the future of development in this area. And hope to see you all again soon. Take care. Bye.